an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, Season 1-ish, Episodes 26 and 27. In these episodes, we actually find out what the deal is with Sanji and Zeff. And it turns out they're not actually related, despite both having blonde hair, which is surprising. Maybe we'll find out, like, they are, but distantly in their pasts. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Bernadette for commissioning this episode. So, these two, first of all, I really do enjoy Sanji a lot. I want to preface it with that. Despite his being a creeper with women, and that being certainly tiring in its way, I still really find him fun in the fact that he's so... He just comes across as, like, tired is the wrong word. It feels like he's very conservative about what is worth his energy. And honestly, I feel like a lot of us could stand to learn that lesson a bit more. Sanji just sort of stands still and protects his energy until it becomes absolutely clear that he does need to do something. And when that's clear, he will do it. He will not hold back. But up until that point, he's really the polar opposite of Luffy. Because Luffy projects his attacks 20 minutes before he takes the attack. You know, there's a reason that in subsequent episodes, we see... or subsequent scenes, really, going into the rest of this episode and the next, we see Luffy, like, racing up a downed mast for a few seconds twice. Because he just basically yells, I'm gonna attack this guy now. Here I come! I'm coming! I'm gonna attack you! Here I come! And, like, most of the time, he can get away with it because of the gum fruit. So even if somebody does know he's coming, he has such built-in power, it doesn't really matter. Usually. Sanji is much more like... It's not even like he's trying to be stealthy, either. Sanji is just much more... Fine. Whips out a leg. Decapitates you, you know? And then he goes back to smoking because he did not let that cigarette fall out of his mouth the whole time, which is part of what I really loved about this variety of scenes of him getting his ass beat by Pearl. Or no, not Pearl, my bad. Although Pearl is still alive, which you guys know, I'm just not here for any of Pearl's antics, so I was super annoyed that Pearl was still alive. But yeah, it's Gin who winds up beating Sanji all over the fucking place. But yeah, so I'm gonna start at the beginning here. I just really had to talk about Sanji's whole vibe and attitude because it's pretty fun. And it's very different to how he is portrayed as a kid. Because as a child, honestly, he's got real Zoro energy. And I don't know if that's just sort of the way they write kids, because when I think back on what Luffy was like, he was also this way. Just extremely high energy, very determined, quick to get angry at anybody who, like, didn't immediately believe him or listen to him. They all had a similar sort of, like, focused objective in their mind that they were obsessed with as a kid. And I think I envy that, you know? As a kid, what I was obsessed with was fairies, Narnia books, and the like concept of becoming an astronaut because I wanted to float. But there was nothing that I feel like I really, really wanted as a kid that I maintained as a goal as I got older. Not really. And we have Zoro becoming the best swordsman, Luffy, being the king of the pirates and getting the One Piece. And then it turns out that Sanji has his own thing, which is finding the All Blue. The All Blue is an ocean. So this is weird. I'm so confused. We've got the East Blue, the North Blue, the South Blue, the West Blue, and then the All Blue. And somebody, when he's talking about this as a kid later, is like, well, of course there's no All Blue. Just think about it. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, well, it doesn't. Like, the All Blue could just be where all of those four directions intersect. If they were set up in a cross. Then the middle, where they all sort of crisscross over one another, would be the All Blue. I don't really feel like that's that out of the question. That said, I have no idea what the map of this universe looks like. I think there's a reason that we haven't really seen much of it. And I'm wondering why it is, because also we have, now that I think about it, Usopp also has this sort of objective from being abandoned as a little boy, of seeing his father again and pirates and whatnot. But Nami, she's very obsessed with treasure, but it's not clear why. We haven't gotten Nami's backstory at all. And now that she has run off, I'm curious if we're going to get it, or if she's going to remain sort of an enigma to us until later. I feel like the fact that she has run off by herself gives an opening to a Nami-centric storyline where we find out why she was suddenly motivated to abandon them and go off on her own. But I will say that Nami not being in the midst of this ridiculous fight is fine with me, because this whole thing is just a mess. So reminder, the last episode ended with Gin taking Zeff hostage, and everybody being just sort of taken aback at the fact that because it has seemed like he was trying to protect the people on the restaurant ship, the Barati, is that how you say it? And he was doing his best to shield them. So him taking Zeff hostage was a bit of a surprise. But then when he's holding Zeff hostage, Sanji is like, I mean, I guess. And then starts being like, wow, you look like an idiot on the floor there, chef. And I was like, what is going on? And Zeff calls him a little brat in response. Sanji says, where do you get off calling me a little brat, you damn bastard? This episode is very heavy on the language that is, for me, I just say the F word every other word. I don't care. But for me, it's surprising that this is allowed in a kid's show. I have to assume that it's been edited in American ones and that the translation is different. That they do something different with the dialogue here. Because later on, I can't remember who says it, but somebody calls somebody else. I think Don Krieg might call Gin a son of a bitch. And I was just like, wow, okay. But yeah, everybody's watching, and it sort of looks like Sanji is acting as if he doesn't care whether or not Zeff lives or dies. But then he's like, well, why don't you point that gun at me then? And this is when fucking Pearl shows back up. Guys, I cannot express to you the level of disappointment I felt at Pearl returning to life. I'm so glad that he is dispatched quickly. And I say dispatched, which usually is like, a euphemism for killed. I don't think he's dead. I was mistaken the first time. I have no reason to think I'm correct in thinking he's dead this time. But at the very least, he is taken out of play pretty quickly. And that's all I want, because this guy, he sucks. This is the first, villain who is ridiculous that is not ridiculous in a way that I find fun. I just find him baffling and frustrating, And I can't tell you exactly why. I think it's because his design just feels so all over the place for me. And it's all over the place in a way that this show doesn't usually do. Normally, the show is all over the place with their character designs in that it feels like there was a grab bag of random clothes and they just reached in and pulled out whatever. But Pearl is so designed for everything to sort of go together. And yet, it doesn't make sense. So I would rather shit didn't go together if you're going to have it be so nonsensical anyway. It just feels like I've been baited and then it hasn't lived up to it. Florian says Pearl should have stayed in Steven Universe. Yeah, I agree. Gabriella says mildly offended by that comparison. Same, a little bit. Considering that I see myself as a Pearl. I thought I was an Amethyst, but according to everybody around me, I'm much more of a Pearl, so there's that. But yeah, I just, the whole assertion of how Pearl operates, too, I think is part of why I don't like this character. We had other people who are ridiculous, but their fighting styles and their claims about how tough they are were actually sustained in most cases by their techniques. And Pearl is just, I feel like I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to take Pearl seriously, and that's why he keeps being taken down. But I wish it was made a little bit more obvious that Pearl was such a joke. And I think it doesn't work for me that Pearl seems to overestimate his capabilities, and that's the joke, when Don Krieg seems to have faith in Pearl and sits back and is like, oh, here we go. There's just a sort of vibe that some people think that he's a genuine threat, but that the show thinks he's a joke. And that confuses me a little bit. Alex says, Japanese doesn't really have dirty words like fuck. When they use them in translation, they're trying to convey the tone. Huh, interesting. I didn't know. So they don't have swears and stuff? That's interesting. What is your language if you don't have words like fuck? That's distressing. God, really making me rethink my life. What would that even be like? I hate it. Anyway, okay. So, like I said, Pearl looks like he is going to attack Sanji. He sends Sanji flying, and there's blood all over the place. And Luffy asks Sanji, what are you doing? And Sanji calls Gin an underling. He says that damn underling would pull the trigger. And Gin is just like, why don't you just give up the boat? Give up the restaurant. That would make it so much easier and everybody would be safe. Just get out of here. And this is when Sanji says, I owe everything to that damn geezer. And this is his dream. I don't want that damn geezer to lose anything else. And he screams this, which is very unexpected. He's distracted by the fact that he is so emotional. And he gets his head smushed between two huge, pearl shields, sort of. And as he collapses, we get cuts between him falling and his flashbacks to being a kid. And we see him on this ship, and he is working in a kitchen. I had thought, when we had seen him in a flashback before, that the kitchen he was working in was on the Bharati. But this is a totally different ship, as it turns out. And there are 3 other chefs here that he's like working with. They all seem very good humored, but I don't know like who he is in relationship to anybody on the ship. Like, are his parents here? How did he, a child, wind up here? I don't know. And he's talking about the all blue, and as he discusses it with them, we get a slow pan through an underwater scene that was actually like really relaxing. This is one of those things that I think Amazon Prime has a lot of these, where you can put on an underwater scene or a fire or snow falling or whatever, just as like a screensaver for your television. And oftentimes the ones of the underwater scenes are like of an aquarium, which I don't find as relaxing because there's just a feeling to these like fish being entrapped that I don't like. But an actual ocean scene, that's different. And this just felt like so chill. I was just like, I could just take a little nap. So yeah, he's talking about the all blue, and the chefs, as it turns out, are kind of like, they're egging him on, but they make it clear that they don't really believe that this is real after a minute, despite sort of like, they're humoring him, but in a mocking kind of way. And they say that it's definitely a story just told by some cook somewhere. And the reason that he dreams of the all blue is because he wants access. Correct me, guys. It's just because he wants access to all of the types of seafood available in all the other oceans at the same time. Is that right? That's all it is? Which is like, on the one hand, adorable. And on the other hand, I'm like, and this has been your consuming dream? Wild. I mean, I'm not like mad about it, but I am surprised. So, sure. I mean, it's not even the fact that like, yeah, Gabriella says he is above everything a chef. The thing is that it's not even like the all blue, unless I missed it. Does he say that there's fish there that are not to be found anywhere else? Because I thought that he just said that it's all the fish from everywhere. So I'm just like, well, you could just travel from like one of the oceans to the other, and eventually you will have tried them all anyway. So it's not like the all blue has anything in particular that you can't find anywhere else, which is sort of what's weird to me. It's not like, he's in search of a spice that's like supposed to be one of the most flavorful, fantastic spices that can change your life in the universe, It's just, I want everything that I already have access to, but in one place, which is incredibly mild as far as ambitions go. I just literally just start a fishery, capture some fish from each place and start a fishery, and you could have your all blue, but just, you built it. So I think that was what was really not hitting for me. It was just the weirdness of the specificity of this, while also not actually being that specific. You know what I mean? Let's see. Gabriella says it's too hard to move in between places. Alex says it's definitely one of the more romantic dream things rather than a practical goal. Gabriella says exports and imports are not really a thing. Alex says it is kind of like wanting to see a fairy. Alex, that doesn't feel right to me. Again, if you were trying to get to a fish that was like a mythical fish, then sure. But it's more like wanting to see an elephant. And it's like, but an elephant, it's totally possible. It's just that you're like, well, I know elephants are out there, but I really want to be somewhere that I can see an elephant and a polar bear and a house cat and a canary all at once. It's like, well, I mean, it's not like we can't make that happen. It's just a weird desire. But anyway, it's just like I said, I found it weird that this was the thing that he was like so excited about as a kid. And then it turns out that like Zeff is also wanting to find this place. And at that point I was just like, all right, well, y'all are both weirdos. So I guess fine. You deserve each other. So we have a scene where all of the chefs are sitting around a table and they are eating the food that the customers left behind on the table that they didn't finish. And they're all sort of like marveling at the fact that the customers barely ate anything. And Sanji is cleaning off plates and he says, stop eating their leftovers. I ditched food that looked rotten earlier. I'm not really sure what he means by that. Like, does he mean that he cleared out rotten food from like the fridge, or that some of the food from the customers that was left over was rotten? But whatever the case, the cooks are all basically like, look, kid, we're on the ocean. Shit can happen. You don't waste food. And the fact that you are acting like we shouldn't finish this means that you don't get it yet. And it becomes very clear later on that he has learned his lesson about that, because starving to death is almost something that he experienced. And yeah, he turns his back on it and is just like, I don't want that food, because somebody holds up like a fish bone with the head still attached. And this is when they get attacked by pirates. And we get to see Red Foot Zeff. First of all, guys, the ship. Zeff's ship has a figurehead. I think it's a goose. It might be a duck. I don't think it's a swan. I think it's a duck. Let's say it's a goose. I like goose. The goose has a chef's hat on, a bib around its neck, and a giant knife and fork sticking out on either side. The fork really looks like a trident. It is the least threatening thing I have ever seen in my life. This is adorable. Like, this would make a pretty good children's book illustration. It would even make a pretty solidly befuddling tattoo in its way. I don't know what I expected. Since his name is Redfoot, I think I expected something foot themed. And this is just all very unexpected. And we get to see him. Now he's got, first of all, he's got 2 feet. He's got his, like, what are now braided mustaches are just, like, regular mustaches that sort of stick out. They look a little bit like blunts, to be honest. But yeah, all of his pirates are very sinister, sneering. And then we have him and his popped collar and his hair standing on end. And it is a look. It's definitely... He looks scary. I mean, despite his fucking ship. And the poor captain of this ship is like, what can I do for you, Red Foot Zeff the pirate? And Zeff is just like, sack the fucking ship. Everybody take all you want from everyone else. Meanwhile, Sanji is hiding and telling them, well, first telling himself, I'm definitely not going to die. That's not happening. I'm going to find a way out of this. And then he comes running out with a knife, or 2 knives, yelling, I won't be killed by bastards like you. Which, you gotta admire. He's got spunk, you know? If I'm gonna be killed by you bastards, I'd rather kill you first. And he tries to, like, swing the knives at them. And the captain kicks him right through like a bulwark. And I really was sort of puzzled at the fact that the captain kicks him, but then saves him later. I feel like, is he kicking him to save him in that instant? And Sanji crawls back to the captain and literally bites his ankle and yells, "I will find the all blue someday." And I think that must be what turns the corner for Redfoot and deciding that he's going to save this kid, because he expresses a, deep desire for the same goal. But all of the fucking other pirates hear that he said all blue, and they react the same way that everyone reacts to Luffy saying that he's going to be king of the pirates. And they just like burst out laughing, telling him that he's too ambitious. Captain, tell him that it didn't exist even in the Grand Line, which, is our first clue that they are sort of after the same thing, actually. That's how they know that it wasn't there, or at least they didn't come across it. So yeah, like I said, Sanji is biting his ankle. He is latched on hard. And I will tell y'all what, that's a valid tactic, in my opinion. If you're fighting for your life, bite. Do it. Nobody is ready for a person to bite them. Like, that's just not something that people are prepared for, and I am fine with it. It needs to happen sometimes. So again, Zeff kicks him off of his, ankle. And Sanji is saying, in the midst of saying, "I'm not going to die here." And then we hear one of Zeff's, second in command maybe being like, "Okay, this storm is actually worse than we thought. We need to withdraw and get out of here." And they all start to leave the ship. And as they're leaving, this huge wave comes up. And it overtakes the entire ship. It knocks Sanji off the side. Later on, Zeff sort of makes an assumption that Sanji and he are the only survivors of the storm, based on the way that both ships reacted to the wave going over. But we did see this, the two ships with the second wave that comes. So I think probably that's true, and they are the only survivors, but we don't actually see who winds up rescuing them later. So I don't know. All right, we do see at least one ship actually go down. I forgot, because that's what injures Zeff. So yeah, they wind up washed up on this little island. And Zeff has a couple of bags. And he tells Sanji that that they're both food, and that Sanji is getting the smaller bag of food because he himself is an adult and, of course, naturally needs more food. And the key here is, reminder, Sanji doesn't know that Zeff lost his foot the whole time. It's not until way later when he comes up on him and realizes. And Zeff cut his foot off himself. I couldn't even quite follow how he did it, because he grabbed an anchor, and I think it's supposed to be either that he used the tip of the anchor, or he wrapped a chain around it and yanked the chain. I'm not even sure. It was hard for me to follow. But he purposely amputated it himself in order to get away so that he could save this kid. So yeah, I love Sanji and how angry he is, saying that we wouldn't even be here if it weren't for you. And I understand him feeling that way, but also there was a huge storm, and the likelihood of the ship going over, whether or not Red Foot Zeff showed up, is actually pretty high. So, I understand Sanji blaming him, and he's a little kid and whatever, but I am really it doesn't seem to me like this would have gone another way if he hadn't been there. The only difference would be that Sanji would probably have died, you know. Alex says, this is one of the most famous censored scenes in anime adaptations. He lost his leg in a different way in the manga. Can you tell what it was? The build-up to the reveal is left completely intact. Did he eat his own leg? Is that what it is? Oh, why did they get rid of that? That's amazing. Wow. That's commitment. I mean, I guess, but like kids love that shit. You know, like I get it in a way, but also like there's some really fucked up fairy tales and shit out there, and we're fine with those. This doesn't feel like that much worse to me. Ah, that's too bad. The manga showed him chopping it off and everything, says Alex. That's so much better. All right, I'm just like, that's clearly the canon in my head now. That's way better. We'll pretend that he cut it off when he got trapped, and then he put it in a bag and carried it with him. And then he just pulled it out of the bag and ate it on the island later. Gabriella says, and it's a better reason for Sanji and Zeff's issue with starvation. That's a good point, Gabriella. That's a lot more traumatizing. And that, like, you know, nearly starving to death is plenty traumatizing enough, but that is like an everyday reminder, and that's different. So, yeah, wow, that's way better. What a bummer that they decided to change that. Like, I get it on the one hand, but also, you know, it's fine. Kids don't get as upset about shit as adults do. We really don't, like, give them the credit that they deserved on their resiliency on that stuff. But yeah, so we get to see the time pass as Sanji, first of all, he gets given all of the food, as we find out later. And he divides it out into as small portions as he can get away with, because he feels that at least if he gives himself 20 days, there will be a ship passing by eventually, and they will get there. And we see him full of hope, and, you know, just he's very optimistic immediately, crossing off the days. And then as time passes and he gets thinner and dirtier, and his food begins running out, and eventually we see him with this like one last crust of bread that's covered in mold, but he's going to eat it anyway. And I just really appreciated him like all curled up saying, I don't want to die, because it's such a thing in these sorts of stories that like somebody will just not really value their own life. And I really appreciate there just being a character who actively is like, no, I'm going to survive this, and I'll find a way, and I don't care if I have to kill you. I'm just not going to die, so just be prepared for that, you know, and for them to not be a villain. So the worst part, though, is when he has that, like, crust of bread, and he drops it over the cliff's edge. Man, y'all know how I feel about food anyway. And I definitely have a sort of sense of insecurity about having enough food at all times, which I think is part of the reason for me, like, gaining and losing weight the way that I always have, and this attachment that I just, it's a weird sort of worry that my mother would probably say is due to a past life. But I've always been very conscious of, is there enough? I don't feel like there's really enough to go around. I feel like that person's getting less and they should get more. You know, even as a very small kid, I was hyper aware of how much each person was getting and how much was left. I was always very zeroed in on food. And so I just react really strongly to storylines that center food. And when he drops this like crust of bread, I just felt so bad for him. And he is thinking back to being a kid and rejecting the leftovers and the food that he threw into the trash. And you can see him just realizing that he did not get it, even though, of course he didn't. How could he? So he drops the bread, and at this point, he has found a whole different section of this little island to wait on. But once he drops the food, he begins to panic, and we see several days go by where there is no food at all. And he really starts to look terrible. The animation really gets it across. Circles under his eyes. He's so thin, filthy. And he crawls his way over to the spot where Zeff is. And he's got this knife that he can barely wield. And he goes over there and tells Zeff. Zeff's like, what did you see? A ship or something? Why are you here? And he doesn't seem to notice that giant bag of food is still there, which wouldn't make a lot of sense. He doesn't think about it. So he slices the bag open, being like, haha, I'm going to get your food. And instead, all of this treasure pours out. And Zeff is just like, yeah, it's weird. Out here, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't mean that you can eat. Didn't I tell you we wouldn't be in contact until we saw a ship? I felt so bad for Sanji in this moment, and how he's picking up the treasure and looking at it, and it's just such a bummer. They both understand what's actually important in this moment. And this is when he comes around and he sees that the guy's foot is missing. And it's just like, oh my God. And poor Zeff is so thin. His, all the tendons and whatnot on his body are showing. He looks like some sort of freaky, a monster in a way, because of how angular they have him drawn here. And Sanji asks, why did you do this? Why did you even save me? And he says, because you had the same dream as me. And this is their connection. And he fantasizes about how maybe one day he'll just have a restaurant, and that will be his purpose in life. And we can, he says something like, searching for the all blue, I can't be a pirate anymore. But this time you can go and find it. And then he falls backward like he's passing out, perhaps dying. And Sanji begins to panic and tells him, geezer, you can't die. And he tells him, yeah, I'll help you with the restaurant. So you can't die, because I just said that I would do that for you. So obviously you have to live so that I can carry that out, which I really enjoy, that kind of logic. That definitely is what, you decide on something and you're like, well, I guess that means that has to happen now because I have said. So, and he says, I've experienced crises like this where I can't eat. And each time I wish that there was a restaurant in the middle of the sea. And that is part of why he has decided on the bar of tea to, have that be the thing. It's too bad the bar of tea isn't a goose with a napkin around its neck. So yeah, that is the whole thing. And then we come back to the present with Sanji collapsed on the ground. It's really funny to me that Pearl has just knocked Sanji down by smashing his head between the two shields. And when Sanji stands up, the camera, so to speak, is sort of positioned over his shoulder, looking at Luffy and Pearl as Sanji struggles up. And Pearl looks genuinely worried about Sanji. And I think it's supposed to be that it's oh, he's worried because it turns out Sanji isn't actually dead. But the way that it's done, it looks much more like he's hey man, are you okay, buddy? And I'm you were the one who did this. What are you doing? But I think I'm also just predisposed to not like Pearl. So what can you do? So this is when he stands up and says, I can't repay the old geezer unless I risk my life for him too. And you can see that Gin is growing a little bit moved by this. And is like, dude, why did you even stand up? Just stay down. And Sanji says, in order for this place to remain a restaurant as long as possible. Here goes Pearl again. That's such a refined line. But this restaurant will be closed now. Refined? Dude, flashy is so much better than refined. It's just so much better. I miss flashily. So Luffy, in his infinite wisdom, is like, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make it so that the shit you keep fighting over is just not here anymore. And that way, nobody will fight because it's gone. Because I'm sick of this bullshit. And, you know, to be honest, same. And I'm not saying that I didn't like these episodes, but I definitely feel like this storyline in particular is dragging for me at this point. I think it's a combo of how long it takes to get the story on Sanji. Pearl just blows. Don Krieg is just not intimidating because of how little he does. He eventually taps back in, but he doesn't feel like a genuine threat because he's just out of the fucking picture for long stretches, letting his henchmen handle stuff. So I don't feel concerned about him. He just seems like sort of a foregone conclusion for me in a way that, like, yeah, I mean, he's very strong and yada, 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 but it feels much more like he'll be out of the way soon enough, and he isn't even the one that we really have to worry about, because his second in command, who is Gin, by the way, is the one that we're having more contact with, that we've gotten to know better, who is, of course, a lot more nuanced because he's not just a straight up villain. And also there's the sense that, like, as the story goes on, you feel like Luffy is picking up strays to join his group. So you become more interested in the people who are not the captains because you are wondering, oh, is this person going to join up with Luffy this time? And so that just causes you to get a little bit more invested and a little bit more interested. And I think that the addition of both Sanji and Gin, that's pretty much taken up the attention that I have to spare for, like, somebody new that I am at all worried about or threatened by. And Don Krieg added into all of it. It's just one person too many who gets sidelined so completely that he gets downgraded from, like, a genuine threat. I mean, let's be honest. If Don Krieg decided that he was going to end this now, he could, and it's weird that he hasn't. He's just leaving this up to everybody else, which is part of what's so weird about Pearl, again, because Pearl is pretty easily fucking defeated later on. But yeah, anyway, the whole thing with this Baratie, I just feel not connected to it because it doesn't impact my people in a substantial way. So, you know, due to that, it's just, I'm ready for this arc to be over. So to jump ahead then, Luffy lifts his foot hundreds of feet into the air and does the Gum Gum battle axe and smashes the ship into pieces. And not the whole ship, just the one fin, but it's like a significant amount of damage. And the title of the next episode is Cool-Headed, Cold-Hearted Demon, Pirate Fleet Chief Commander Gin. Cool-Headed, Cold-Hearted Demon is a really, really good, like, album name, actually. So yeah, everybody is really mad at Luffy for doing this because obviously everybody wants this ship to be undamaged for their own possession. And he has ruined that plan. But I definitely understand where Luffy is coming from here. And if it weren't for the fact that Nami had run off with their ship, I would just be like, well, just evacuate the fucking Bharati, give it to these stupid pirates, and you guys can go and build a new ship, and it sucks, but, you know, it'll be fine. But, you know, under the circumstances, they're all very much stuck here, so what can you do? So, okay, I love Luffy. I only broke the fin. And guys, can I just take an aside to talk about the voice actor for Luffy and his delivery? Because this episode starts off with everybody screaming at him. And him just saying, I'll sink it. What? I'll sink the ship. I can't even keep a straight face. He goes from so over the top high energy to then completely impassive in this way that's like chilling, you know? Oh my god, no way. Alex says, voice actress, actually. He's voiced by a tiny Japanese grandma who is adorable. Did you guys tell me this before? I feel like this is new information. Oh my god. That's so much better. Oh my god. Well, she's flawless because Luffy's whole vibe. Later on, I think Don Krieg yells like, hey, you brat. And like any other character would be like, who are you calling a brat? Or like, yeah, what do you want, old man? Or, you know, anything like that. But he yells, hey, you brat. And Luffy just goes, hmm? I don't know why, but him like not even actually using full words or sentences to respond it's just so funny to me. It feels like he really isn't that concerned with what this person has to contribute to the conversation. He's half asleep practically, you know. I just really enjoy this. I'll sink it. What? I'll sink the ship. And everybody is staring at him with this, like, you know, that's not funny, one of them yells. And Luffy at first tries to say, oh, if I sink it, there's no reason for them to attack. There won't be any ship left. Later on, Gin, like, sort of gets, you know, outs himself as the fighter that he is. And Luffy tries to be like, I planned this all along, of course. This is why I decided to destroy the ship, to force their hand, and Sanji is having none of it. Just like, you liar. Stop it. You were just gonna fucking destroy the ship. Just admit it. And also, Luffy gets into Sanji's face and says, dying isn't what you should do to repay kindness. That's not what he saved you for. Being given life and yet dying is something a weakling would do. Honestly, he makes a good point. I'm not mad. That's a solid argument. And I feel like if anybody had actually stopped to ask Zeff what he felt about it, he would have been like, yes, exactly. Thank you. So then everybody is up in each other's faces. Sanji and Luffy are face to face and talking about whether there's another way to, like, settle this matter. Pearl still here. It's disgraceful that you keep arguing like this. You can't do any more reckless things with the Krieg pirates as your opponent. I hate him. I hate his fucking stupid face. I hate his laugh. Burn to death with my fire pearls. Shut up. You suck. So he comes running at them with his fire pearls. And then we see the gun that Gin had been holding falls to the deck, and he goes flying forward and absolutely fucking shatters Pearl's whole, like, front panel. The rear panel on his back seems fine, but the front is completely gone. And as he collapses, he just says, "Why, Gin-san?" And this is around where Don Krieg calls him a son of a bitch, I think. And Gin basically is like, look, I don't want Sanji to die like this. If he's going to die after saving our lives, let him at least die at my hands. And this is when, "Have you lost your mind, Pirate Fleet Chief Battle Commander?" Which I was like, that is a hell of a fucking title. And it turns out that Gin has this, like, you know, whole reputation. He is super powerful. I don't know what to call the weapon he's using. Is this a mace? I feel like it's a mace, basically, right? It's just a huge metal ball on the end of a stick. I mean, that sounds like sort of just like I'm minimizing it, but I don't mean to. It's just that's what it looks like. And he says, "At least burying you with my own hands is my way of settling this matter." To which Sanji says, "Well, to hell with you," as he lights another cigarette, which I swear to God, his whole energy is very funny to me. Luffy calls everybody a weakling, and all of the pirates, who are, by the way, still just like clinging to Flotsam and trying to, you know, not drown, they're all around being like, "What do you mean, weaklings? How dare you? We are the most feared pirates in the East Blue." And Luffy says, "Isn't that just because you had the most pirates? Like, do you still?" And they all get very offended about that. And Sanji seems a little bit gratified, even though he is mad at Luffy. Also is like, well, you definitely struck a nerve with that one. So this is when the fight begins. And I just was like really hoping that there would be more even footing, but Gin is really quite an opponent for Sanji. Sanji takes his like first kick, and he has been so successful up to this point that I was hoping he would be able to land one right away. Instead, it's just sort of him and Gin winding up avoiding each other, and Gin manages to like land a blow on the ground right next to Sanji's head and sort of trap Sanji by the neck against the deck, but he doesn't smash his head in, which, you know, it's unclear whether it's because he couldn't or because he missed, you know. And now that he has Sanji trapped, he has this moment to get his whole weapon going, because he has two of these things. And he's got one spinning behind him, and all of his crew is like, "All right, do it, bash his head in." And it's like one of those moments of the build-up. And I'm like, all right, what's going to stop him? Because I don't think Sanji dies here. And as he begins to come down on Sanji's head with it, Sanji spits his lit cigarette into Gin's face, does this like sort of weird backflip out from under the thing, and then kicks Gin in the face from a handstand position. And Gin yanks his weapon up and gets Sanji in the ribs with it. And they both go flying in opposite directions and appear to be pretty badly injured. So eventually we did get to a spot where I was like, okay, they are more evenly matched than I expected. But at first, the fact that like Sanji completely missed him with that kick, I was like, oh no. So eventually, we have Luffy who attempts in the time that at least we have one piece of the script acknowledging the fact that Don Krieg is just literally over here doing nothing, because Luffy is like noticing the fact that Don Krieg is all by his lonesome, and he's like, well, fuck this. I'm just going to go over there and attack this guy now then, like, obviously. And he goes sprinting over in that direction, and Don Krieg, like, I forget what he does. I think he, like, throws a bomb that, like, blows up the water right in front of Luffy at that point and stops him. And Luffy just goes flying backward. Yeah, that's what happens the first time. So, yeah, it does not pay off. But I did at least appreciate a little bit of acknowledgement that Don Krieg is like a sitting duck in a lot of ways. And Luffy is like, aren't you going to fight me? And he's like, I don't need to fight you. I just need to kill you. And I'm like, well, then do that, though. But he's not. He will stand here and watch his underling fight for him and just have a cup of coffee, I guess. So eventually we get to the point where Gin admits that he can't kill Sanji. He has, Sanji at his mercy, and there's a moment, and, the moment finally passes, and then Gin starts crying and says, I can't do it. I can't do it, Don Krieg. And he's like sobbing as he says it. I can't kill this man. And Don Krieg is shocked. He should not be, but he is. And we get the flashback to Sanji feeding him and the experience of being saved. And I've followed your orders and I will from here on as well. And he even goes to say, so far as to say, all of the stuff we've done in the past, I don't even have a problem with. So the writers are making it very clear. We're not acting like Gin is a good person or having a change of heart and morality. It's just this one person that he's like, oh, come on, man. Just throw me this bone and don't make this guy a target right now. Just this one. Let it off the hook, please. And then eventually he gets to the point where he just says, can we let the whole ship off the hook, I think is what he says. Let this ship, this restaurant off the hook. Yeah. He asks for the whole thing. Oh, here it is. This is when he says, you son of a bitch. As if defying my orders wasn't enough, now you're giving me a lecture. And he then takes off one of the ridiculous epaulettes of his suit. And there is, I thought it was going to be like something underneath the epaulette, but it turns out it is the epaulette itself. It is that big because it is in and of itself a weapon. So he presses something on the back of it. The skull's jaws part, and then this like chute opens. And it turns out that this is MH5, which shoots poison gas. And I thought it was just going to be, like one sort of bomb. But when we see it go off, it's apparently like a bunch of small, I don't want to say bullets. What would you call them? Like little missiles, I guess? That I assume are each sort of filled with gas, and like when they make contact will explode and the gas will go up. But yeah, he's out here lecturing might makes right. No matter what means we take, the result is everything. Using poison gas or whatever, winning is all that matters. And as he says this, we cut to the rest of the pirates, and they all have gas masks on. So they all were protesting earlier, like, this is going to kill us too. But they all have gas masks, evidently, so there's nothing for them to worry about. It's just like the poor staff of the ship that have to worry. And So, yeah, I love Sanji from the ground. What a horrible bastard. And even Gin pulls out his gas mask that he just has, like, inside his shirt. And Krieg yells, "Put that gas mask away. You're no longer one of us." And I'm like, dude, come and take it from him. What do you think? He's just going to be like, well, all right, I guess I'll die then if you say so. Dude, shut up. Get out of here, you fucking weirdo. Krieg is just a goon. So then we see Luffy running for him again over this mast. "I won't let you shoot poison gas," and he calls him an anchor boy and says, "Stop scampering about," which for some reason was so funny to me. And then he shoots all of these bullets. I want to call them bullets because they look like bullets. And they don't shoot out of the mouth of the skull like I expected on the epaulette. They come out of a bunch of holes around the outside. So I guess they are just bullets. I don't know if he's even shot the gas yet. It seems like bullets are all we've got going to me, like, at first. There's also like one of those ammo sort of belts. I don't know what you call those, like hanging off the side with tons of bullets in it. And Luffy runs to try and like stop them. I didn't really understand what happened here, guys. I'll be honest, because the bullets pass Luffy, and yet when he lands, I don't see any damage from them. Did he manage to stop them somehow? Because they go, like, I don't see him reach out and stop them. I don't see him, like, use his gum power to absorb the impact of them. So what exactly did those do? Is it supposed to have just been, like, that he was just trying to shoot at Luffy and missed and they just went into the, like, ocean, basically? I expected there to be more of a fallout from all of those bullets because there was a lot and they were big. And then nothing. So at this point, Gin does throw his mask into the water. And look, I recognize that but he's doing it to punish himself, not because he's obeying Don Krieg. Just need to like make that distinction. But yeah, he's like, I failed and I got too low. It's just, come on, Gin. You are not, you've got like some kind of moral compass, but it just keeps bringing you in the wrong direction. And then we see the gas, like, pellet, I guess, come flying out of Krieg's weapon. And Luffy grabs a couple of masks off of two random dudes with his gum ability and just says, "Let me borrow those." Turns around and chucks them toward Gin and Sanji. And then he turns around and then there's this moment. What does he say? Because I think he says that, he says, "Sanji, Gin, use these now for mine." And then turns around and realizes that everybody else is hiding underwater to get away from the gas. So there's no mask available for him. And we just see this sort of missile like heading toward them and a impact sound and light, but we don't actually see like what the fallout of it is. And that is the end of the episode. So yeah, I have no idea what to expect and genuinely don't. I just really like, just kill Don Krieg. Can we just get rid of this guy? He's bumming me out. Yeah, I don't like him. Anyway, so I gotta wrap, but thank you guys again for hanging out with me. Thank you, Bernadette, for commissioning this episode again. I appreciate you. And I'm sorry that I didn't like this one as much, but I think it's fair. You know, like, I try and be as fair as I can. And I think that, you know, enough of you sort of like get it So it's fine. They're not all going to be winners. This is a very, very long running show. So there are going to be arcs that just kind of fall flat. What can you do? So yeah, anyway, thank you again. And I will be seeing you, let's see, I think just next week, right? Oh, wow. No, not another episode until July 13th. So there's actually more of a break here than there has been. But after that, it'll be very, very consistent. So no worries. Yeah, there'll still be plenty happening. So yeah, guys, I will see you in July then with a new episode. So until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.